You do clearly say, and this is a quote from you, the breakdown in mitochondria results in chronic disease. And heart disease is, you classify it as chronic disease, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start off with the mitochondria. What are the mitochondria, and why are they so important? And what happens so that they break down and then they get damaged, and that results in chronic disease? Let's just cover all that. I know it's quite broad because you explain that throughout the book.
Yeah, so mitochondria are the little organelles inside of our cells that are responsible for a lot of different things. It's thought, we're taught in biology classes and medical school that they are the powerhouses of the cell, and that their main job is to make ATP. And ATP is, kind of like the energy currency, or we're taught that it's the energy currency in our bodies that drives all cellular processes and functions. Now, that is mostly true. I would say what I just said is mostly true, but mitochondria are much more than that. And ATP is not necessarily, the currency of the cell. It's very important, but it's not necessarily what drives all cellular processes. So anyways, the mitochondria are the organelles that allow us to take energy from various sources, whether it's the chemical bonds in food that we break down, and we can get energy from that, or the sunlight, or correct electromagnetic fields, like contact with the earth. Like, we take in energy from our environment in the form of electrons, or in the form of electricity, we should say, and it takes that electricity and it passes electrons down what's called the electron transport chain, and we end up making a lot of different things. We make carbon dioxide, which is why we have to breathe that out, right? We make water, and this is perfectly deuterium depleted structured water that it's making, which is very important. That's the type of water you want to be made. So we're taught in school, though, this water is a byproduct. It's like, oh yeah, that's just a side effect of what the mitochondria do. It's like, no, it's actually very important. It makes a free radical. So, the free radical is a molecule with an unpaired electron, which is quote unquote unstable. But these free radicals do a lot of different things for us. They actually trigger a lot of different cellular processes, and they can even help with communication between different aspects of the body. And then also, the mitochondria generate heat, which is why we're warm, heat creating beings. The heat in the form of infrared light. So that's why we actually emit light as humans, but it's an infrared, it's non-visible spectrum light. And that's why you can put on a pair of infrared heat goggles or thermal goggles, and you can detect somebody. And then also they make ATP. And so the ATP is the main role for ATP is to unfold proteins. So proteins become folded, and if you unfold them, they get more surface area. And these unfolded proteins in the cell are what allow the cell pretty much to function like it's supposed to and communicate to other cells. And the main role of ATP is to maintain this unfolded structure of the collagen proteins, the extracellular matrix in the cell, so that it can do what it needs to and communicate. So that's mitochondria. Now, going into heart disease, that mitochondria are very, very dense in heart cells. There's lots and lots of mitochondria. Just one of the heart tissue is one of the tissues with the highest amounts of mitochondria in the entire body. It's about 5,000 per cell, give or take. The eye is also very high in mitochondria, and the brain's pretty high too. But the heart seems to be the highest. And so it's very, very important to maintain health of our mitochondria. And so to maintain health of our mitochondria, we need to avoid inflammation and oxidative stress. So that can be lots of different things that we could talk about, but also getting adequate energy from your environment. So sunlight and grounding and things like that, but also, the correct, the correct fuel source as far as food goes is important. We get about 1/3 of our energy from food, and so it's important to have a fuel source that is, I'd say, more efficient. And so that is fatty acids and ketones. Those are much more efficient fuel sources for our mitochondria. They create less exhaust, I would say, less, if you're talking about like a car metaphor, but they create less free radicals. They're more efficient. You get way more ATP when you use fatty acids and ketones. So, and it's interesting, the heart actually prefers to burn fatty acids and ketones. And whereas most tissues in the body, like we all know in the low carb space, that we have to restrict carbohydrates to encourage the body to go over to burning more fatty acids and ketones, to making ketones and burning fatty acids. But with the heart, even in the presence of glucose, it will choose to burn fatty acids and ketones. And I think there's a reason for that. And that is because if heart tissue is forced to burn more glucose than it wants to, issues can happen. And that can lead to what I call metabolic heart attacks. And so there was this trade-off, whereas, heart cells couldn't divide, so they had to be very, very efficient because they can't divide and make new tissue. They have to be able to repair themselves, so they have to maintain that efficiency. And that was the preference for heart tissue, to burn fatty acids and ketones. So yeah, mitochondria all play a role in that, and they're very, very important for our health. I mean, literally, they're what's driving our physiology. So yeah.